The first part. The fluorescent lights in the office buzzed faintly, flickering every few seconds like a dying heartbeat. I had only been working here for a week and already something felt off. The air was too still, the shadows in the corners too deep. Yet, it wasn't until I found the employee handbook sitting ominously on my desk that I realized just how strange things truly were. Rule number 1. Never arrive before 8 a.m. or stay past 8:00 p.m. It was written in bold, larger than the rest of the text. Beneath it, in smaller font, was a single word: mandatory. I frowned, flipping through the pages. More odd rules followed. Rule number 2. If the landline rings at exactly 3:13 p.m., do not answer it /. Rule number 3. If you hear typing from an unoccupied cubicle, do not investigate /. Rule number 4. If you see someone standing by the vending machine but they aren't reflected in the glass, leave the room immediately. The list continued, each rule more bizarre than the last. I chuckled uneasily, assuming it was some kind of office hazing tradition. Maybe an inside joke among employees. But then at exactly 3:13 p.m. the landline rang. I froze. My pulse quickened as the sound echoed through the empty office. It was an old-fashioned rotary phone, the kind you'd expect to see in a 1970s detective movie. It sat in the break room, usually untouched, yet now it rang with an eerie persistence. I stared at it, debating whether to obey the ridiculous rule or dismiss it as nonsense. The ringing continued. My hand twitched. Then just as I reached out, the phone stopped. The silence that followed was oppressive, like the office itself was holding its breath. I exhaled, shaking my head. It was just a stupid prank. That night, as I left the building, I noticed a janitor standing by the vending machine. I hadn't seen him before. He wore a navy blue uniform and stood motionless, staring at the selections. I walked past him, but something nagged at me. I glanced at the vending machine's glass reflection, and my blood ran cold. There was nothing there. The janitor, the one standing right in front of me, had no reflection. My breath hitched. The office suddenly felt too large, too empty, as if it had swallowed everyone else. The overhead lights flickered, casting distorted shadows. The janitor turned, his face eerily blank. "You should go home now," he said, his voice flat, mechanical. I didn't hesitate. I bolted for the exit, my heart hammering. The moment I stepped outside, the night air felt suffocating, thick with something I couldn't name. I ran to my car, fumbling with the keys. When I glanced back, the janitor was still standing by the vending machine, staring at me through the glass doors. He smiled. The next morning I found a sticky note on my desk. "You broke rule number 4. Consider this your first warning." My hands shook as I crumpled the note. I didn't tell anyone. Who would believe me? But as the week continued, the rules weren't just strange, they were deadly. And I was starting to realize that breaking them wasn't an option. The second violation. The sticky note haunted me for the rest of the day. I kept glancing at it, half expecting the words to change or disappear. No one else seemed to notice my unease. My coworkers went about their business as if the rules were perfectly normal. I told myself it had to be a joke. Some elaborate prank to scare the new guy. But deep down I knew better. I didn't sleep well that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the janitor's empty reflection. His hollow smile burned into my mind. By morning I convinced myself I had imagined it. That illusion shattered when I walked into the office and found a new rule taped to my monitor. Rule number 5. If you hear someone whisper your name but see no one, do not respond. The note was written in the same precise, bold handwriting as the others. My stomach twisted. This wasn't a joke. Something, was watching me. I wanted to tell someone, but who? Would they even believe me? I thought about quitting, but a part of me needed answers. At exactly 10:27 a.m. I heard it. A whisper. Soft, barely audible but unmistakable. It came from behind me. My name drawn out in a slow, deliberate hiss. I didn't turn around. I didn't speak. I squeezed my hands into fists, my nails digging into my palms. The whisper came again, closer this time. A cold breath against my ear. "Don't ignore me." I clenched my jaw and focused on my computer screen, forcing myself to type. My fingers trembled over the keyboard. Then the air shifted. The room felt darker. Heavier. I could see my reflection in the computer screen. And behind me, standing just out of focus, was a figure. I blinked and it was gone. A new sticky note appeared on my desk when I looked away. "You broke rule number 5. Consider this your second warning." My breath hitched. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. I needed to get out. But I had a sinking feeling that leaving wasn't an option anymore. The third transgression. I didn't go home that night. I couldn't. The office felt unsafe, but my apartment felt worse, like the shadows there had grown thicker, waiting. So I stayed hunched over my desk, pretending to work while my mind spiraled. At some point, exhaustion won. My eyes fluttered shut. The moment they did, I was somewhere else. A hallway. The walls stretched endlessly in both directions, lined with doors that all looked the same. Cold metal locked. A single flickering bulb swayed above me, casting elongated shadows that moved when I wasn't looking. A whisper slithered through the air. "You don't belong here." I turned, too fast. The hallway twisted, distorting like melted wax. A door creaked open at the far end. Beyond it, only darkness. A shadow stepped forward. Tall. Thin. Grinning. I jolted awake, gasping. My office was empty. My screen flickered, the cursor blinking expectantly. My heart pounded against my ribs. That's when I saw the sticky note. Rule number 6. Never fall asleep at your desk. My stomach dropped. My hands shook as I peeled the note from my monitor. Beneath it, in red ink, was something new. "You broke rule number 6. Consider this your third and final warning." Final? The air in the office shifted. The lights dimmed. I turned, feeling something watching me. The vending machine's glass reflected movement behind me, something that wasn't there when I turned around. I wasn't alone. And I wasn't sure if I had any chances left. The unseen consequence. The office had changed. Subtly but undeniably. The air felt heavier, thick with an unspoken threat. The overhead lights flickered at irregular intervals, casting shifting shadows across the floor. My skin crawled with the sensation of unseen eyes tracking my every movement. I knew I had no more warnings left. I had to leave. My chair screeched as I pushed away from my desk, my movements stiff with fear. The vending machine stood near the exit, its dim glow casting eerie reflections on the polished floor. I glanced at it cautiously, half expecting to see something staring back at me. But the glass only showed my own pale, exhausted face. I exhaled, forcing myself to move. The office door loomed ahead, just a few steps away. As I reached for the handle, a soft chime rang through the silence. The landline. My breath hitched. Rule number 2. If the landline rings at exactly 3:13 p.m., do not answer it. I glanced at my watch. 3:13 p.m. on the dot. The ringing continued, each chime drilling into my skull. My fingers twitched by my side, instinct fighting against logic. I wasn't supposed to answer it. But what would happen if I did? The ringing stopped. Silence wrapped around me like a noose, suffocating, absolute. Then came the whisper. "You're out of time." Cold dread washed over me as the lights cut out completely, plunging the office into darkness. My heart pounded, the sound deafening in the silence. I took a shaky step back, and felt something behind me. A breath, icy and damp, brushed against my ear. A hand, skeletal and impossibly cold, gripped my shoulder. My muscles locked in place, my mind screaming at me to run, to fight, to do anything but stand there. Then the lights flickered back on. The office was empty. But the vending machine's glass now showed something standing behind me. Something tall. Thin. Grinning. I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Instead, I took a slow, measured step forward. Then another. The exit was just ahead, just a few steps more. The whisper returned, this time right at my ear. "You broke the rules?" My vision blurred. The door handle felt like ice beneath my grip. I twisted it desperately, throwing myself through the doorway and into the dark. The final rule. The darkness swallowed me whole. For a moment, I thought I had fallen into nothingness. My breath came in sharp, panicked gasps. My hands grasped at empty air. No walls, no floor, just void. The silence pressed against my ears, thick and suffocating. Then distant footsteps. Slow. Measured. I wasn't alone. A dim, sickly light flickered to life around me, revealing the space I was trapped in. It wasn't the office anymore. The walls were impossibly tall, lined with rows of old filing cabinets that stretched upward into the dark. Papers fluttered through the air like dying moths, carried by an unseen wind. Then I saw them. Figures stood between the cabinets, unmoving. Their faces were blurred, distorted as if I were looking at them through rippling water. Some had missing features. No mouths, no eyes, just smooth, empty skin. Others had too many, their faces writhing with shifting expressions. A rustling sound came from above. I didn't want to look up. But I did. Something hung from the ceiling. Dangling. Swaying. My breath hitched as I recognized the clothing, the posture. It was me. My own body hung limply above, its head lolling to the side, empty eye sockets staring down at me. A final sticky note was pinned to its chest. Rule number 7. If you see yourself, it's already too late. A sharp pain bloomed in my skull. My knees buckled and the ground beneath me shifted. The figures moved now, closing in, their limbs twitching at unnatural angles. The whispers returned, layering over each other, a chorus of voices speaking in languages I didn't understand, until one phrase broke through. You belong to us now. The last thing I saw before the darkness swallowed me again was my own lifeless face staring back. They found my desk empty the next morning. My belongings untouched. My computer still logged in. A new sticky note sat neatly in the center of my keyboard. Rule number 1. A missing employee is never to be mentioned. The end.